Hello, people of the internet. This is Kaiju Noir,
And I'm Pete.
and here's our review for Man of Steel, the reboot to the Superman movie franchise, and what is supposedly the jumpstart to a Justice League franchise. Now, before we get into the actual review, I should we go over at least go over our experiences with Superman, with the character of Superman himself in the previous movies.
Absolutely. And I guess I say that because I have little or no really in-depth experience with Superman. And I occasionally watch the show whenever I got the chance. I was never too into Superman. He was never my favorite hero. And I've never been, again, just never been too into the character of Superman. Just not my thing. It just really hasn't been a major superhero for me.
So you were more of a Batman fan, weren't you?
In that regard, yes. I was more. I was more of a Spider-Man fan, but
Spider-Man?
yeah.
For me, Superman was one of those characters that I've always known about since I was a kid. My introduction to Superman was the original Christopher Reeve movie. That movie, really stuck with me growing up, and I always saw that as the one true version of Superman. I also grew up with the 19, I believe it was the 1940s Max Fleischer cartoons, and watching them again recently, they look just as spectacular from an animation standpoint as they did back in their time.
Wasn't there an episode? I have this really old VHS. I know this is totally out of anything, but wasn't there like an episode where he fought Godzilla or a dinosaur creature?
I know, yes, he actually fought a quote unquote Tyrannosaurus Rex, but that is clear if you were to watch that short again, that is clearly not a Tyrannosaurus
That's
Rex.
clearly Godzilla, right? I'm not going crazy, right?
Oh, here's the thing. That movie, that short was made like years before The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms or Godzilla.
Really?
So he fought Godzilla before Godzilla was Godzilla.
Go Superman. It's because he's Superman. He can do that because he's Superman.
You know what? Speaking of that, it's probably that short is probably the closest thing we'll ever get to Godzilla versus Superman.
Yeah. Anyways, back to your experience.
Eventually, I watched Superman 2 when I was very little, and I thought, this was amazing. It really brought a very human side to Superman, more so than the last movie. And then after, I remember at the end of the credits, it said, "Coming soon, Superman 3." I'm like, oh my god, what's he gonna do next? And he fights a second-rate Lex Luthor clone and Richard Pryor, and Superman becomes a dick after being exposed to fake kryptonite. And I'm like, what? And then, of course, later down the line, I finally saw Superman 4, and I'm like, wow.
What happened?
Yeah.
Again, unfortunately, I'd never had really much exposure to Superman, so I can't say I had that same feelings you had. I've never really actually seen any of the original movies, unfortunately.
That's unfortunate. We should have probably watched at least the first Superman before going into this one.
That'd be a good idea.
Maybe we'll watch it tomorrow. Who knows?
We'll see.
And then afterwards, there was Superman the Animated Series, which was a part of the DC Animated Universe that included Batman the Animated Series and Superman and Justice League Unlimited. I didn't really see that much of the show growing up because I was always a Spider-Man and Batman fan. I loved the Superman movies, but when it came to the cartoons, I was mostly Spider-Man and Batman. I did watch a lot. I remember I did watch a lot of the Justice League episodes, and I have been keeping up with a lot of the direct-to-video Superman movies, such as Superman Doomsday, Superman vs. the Elite, which is probably my favorite favorite of the Superman direct-to-video films. The two Superman Batman movies, which were a lot of fun, and the Superman All-Star Superman, which was pretty interesting. Although from what I hear, the comic was better.
Well,
have you seen any of those direct-to-video movies?
I have not, unfortunately. But in that sense, it presents a good opportunity to, when we look at this movie, you, the Superman enthusiast, and me as a common moviegoer, giving our different thoughts and opinions on the movie. Again, you are a Superman fan.
Yes,
correct?
I would say that. Although I've had more, even though I've had more exposure to Batman, Superman was an idol from my childhood.
Right. And like I said, I can't say the same. So I'm pretty sure we're gonna have different perspectives and different ideas on as to like what we thought on the movie.
Oh yeah, we definitely did. Now going into Superman, I'm sorry, the Man of Steel. Oh wait, not even that. Man of Steel. I don't know why they couldn't bother to put a "the" in front of it. And so to go in to start this off, the Man of Steel is the story of Kal-El, an alien from the planet Krypton. His planet is about to explode, so his mother and father send him as a baby to the planet Earth, where the gravity and the yellow sun gives Kal-El, aka Clark Kent, abilities that no human on Earth could possibly achieve, such as super strength, flight, you name it. And just like in Superman 2, General Zod, a criminal who has this survival of the fittest mentality, locates Superman and attempts to use the planet Earth as a place where he can create a new Krypton, which in the process would eliminate humanity. Now Superman has to convince the world that he is their protector and would have to stop at nothing to prevent General Zod from taking over the world. So initial thoughts.
I had a lot of issues with the movie. I was going in. I was really excited to see the movie, including like you said, the title itself, "The Man of Steel." Um, I felt like it was gonna be something different. Again, with Batman, you had the Dark Knight, and when it came to the Dark Knight, that was it was a big thing for superhero movies. And you could say in that sense that it was something different, a lot different compared to those superhero movies. So I was hoping with that in that sense it would carry on to the Man of Steel, or like you said, Man of Steel. However, what I got out of it was somewhat of a generic superhero movie, nothing too incredible. One of the things I really find problematic with the movie is I really had a problem with the actors personally.
You did?
I did. Not the lead characters. I didn't really have any trouble with that. The actor that played the Man of Steel.
Henry Cavill?
Thank you. But it was the supporting actors that I really had some just. I really couldn't get into them. The supporting actors and young Clark Kent really just threw me off. And because the supporting characters are in the movie a lot, they're focused a lot. In the other sense, I do like them for that. Because they're so focused on a lot, and I don't like specifically how they talk or their acting, how they act in this movie. It just bothered me a lot. I don't really know how to explain that really. I felt like they weren't really emoting as much as they should, or they just weren't doing it for me.
I didn't mind the acting so much. Rather, I felt like there were, I think, too many characters for this movie that some of them were not very developed all that much. For instance, there was that one scientist guy. He's just there to deliver exposition on what sciencey stuff is going to happen.
Right.
And then there's the Daily Bugle, where you have three employees that the movie focuses on during the final battle. One of them being Perry White, played by Lawrence Fishburne, and I didn't really get why they were focused so much, considering they didn't really have that much. They didn't really have any sort of real character arc per se. Although I would have to say, I really enjoyed Henry Cavill. I thought he played a decent Superman. You can tell this is a Superman who is very young, very fresh, a rookie. Doesn't know how to completely he doesn't have like a firm grasp on his powers like the Christopher Reeve Superman. After all, in the original Superman, he spent about like several years in the Fortress of Solitude. Here, this Superman pretty much has to learn everything on his own, basically.
How do you feel of this origin story, or this the way they have it on here in this movie?
I really liked this take on the origin story. I felt like it was pretty fresh. It brought some new ideas. They really changed a lot when it came to Superman's secret identity, because in this movie a lot more people know about Superman's actual identity than in the comics and previous films.
That's actually another thing that bothered me when it came to Lois Lane. it took her little to no effort to find out who he was. I mean,
Well,
sure,
I think in the movie it said that it took her 2 weeks.
2 weeks to find out who Superman was. I don't know. I feel like it would take like a lot longer to find someone who has literally gone out of his way to disappear on multiple occasions with falsified names, falsified identities, and it only took you 2 weeks to find out who he was with just your investigative skills. No, I don't. I find that hard to believe, but I guess.
But when you're like a guy with superpower with the power to lift an entire truck with only your hands, that's bound to leave an impression on a lot of people. So I think that was kind of easy for I can see why it would be easy for Lois Lane to look for people who have witnessed this incredibly powerful man.
I kind of understand that sense, but I don't know. I just feel it was too easy for her to fit things together, and going all the way back to his child or to his, where he grew up. I don't know. Again, it is a movie, but to me it was a little too far fetched in that sense. But I understand what you mean, though.
It probably maybe seemed short for the sake of pacing.
Right.
Were there any characters in particular that stood out for you in good or bad ways?
Not really, to be honest. And obviously General Zod, he was more loud sometimes. I felt he was like a little over the top at times. I'm pretty sure you understand what I mean. I wasn't too big a fan of Jor-El, played by Russell Crowe.
Really?
He didn't do anything bad, but I don't think he did anything good. It was just a basic role. I didn't see anything. I didn't get anything out of it, other than the basic story. There was a funny scene though where where I don't like we both looked at each other when he said what was that line from 300 basically?
Oh yeah, this is madness.
This is madness.
I was expecting like General Zod to say, "Madness, this is Krypton."
Exactly. I was like,
Well, this was from the same director.
Yeah, that's why I bring it up. But yeah, to me, really, no character really stood out for me, which is a big shame, or just kind of sad for me. There's usually always a standout character, but for me, there really wasn't anyone who stood out among the crowd. I mean, Superman, I guess, would have to be that character since he did have the powers, he did have the strengths. But that's all I can really say. I mean, again, it wasn't something that got my attention fully. I just had there was times where I even had trouble focusing with the movie itself.
Yeah. For me, I really enjoyed Michael Shannon as General Zod. I believe he was very menacing. I really liked his expressions. I was okay with him going over the top sometimes. As for Russell Crowe as Jor-El, I feel like he was overused in this movie. I feel like one of my problems with the movie is that there's a bit of repetition in this movie.
No, I can definitely agree with you on that.
Like for the original Superman, going back to the original Superman, you saw Marlon Brando's Jor-El. You see him at the beginning. You see him once when he's talking to his son for the first time, and that's about it basically. For here, you see Russell Crowe so many times. It almost seems like as if Russell Crowe demanded more screen time. Like, if you're gonna have me in this movie, I better be in half the scenes.
Now, out of curiosity, I do want since you saw the second Superman movie.
Yeah.
How did this General Zod compare to that fare up with that General Zod?
I think like this is a more crazy, more diabolical General Zod than the original portrayal. That one, I feel like he was a bit more subtle. He had a bit more presence. When he tells you to kneel, you will kneel. You feel like he can do anything he wants just with his own hands. Whereas this General Zod requires a larger army and a larger arsenal of weapons. So I feel like this was different enough for me to separate myself from the original.
Where you don't need the need to compare them.
Right. Same thing with Christopher Reeve and Henry Cavill. I feel like they were both different enough that, much like how Michael Keaton is very different from the Christian Bale Batman.
Right.
Let's see. Any other character? I really liked the Superman's Earth Clark Kent's Earth father.
Oh, I did not.
You didn't?
I really, I got the whole idea of him, just looking out for his son, but the way they worded a lot of his interactions with his Earth father,
Mm-hmm.
I was not a fan of that. I don't know. Just some of the actions or some of the words that his father spoke to him,
Mm-hmm.
just I did not agree with that. I don't know if that goes along with his actual character from like the comics or from the past movies, but that's it. I did not enjoy the father that much. He didn't come out often,
Mm-hmm.
and when he did, he didn't have a strong feeling for me. I didn't feel much out of him other than I don't really like this guy.
I really liked him because it shows just how different this movie is when compared to the older movies. Here, he's telling him to hide his powers and to not stick and to stay blend in with the crowd. He's only even though they might not he might not be all what he's saying is might not always be like the right thing to do. The most important thing is he's looking after his son. Although I do admit, like going back to my original complaint about the repetition, there are times where he recites the same lines a couple times, especially that line "You were put on here, you were here on Earth for a reason."
And I understand what you mean, but I think there's a much better ways to word some of the things he says. I mean, like he asked him, "Is it okay for people to die?" And I think he replied with, do you remember what he replied with? It wasn't.
I can't remember.
It was something along the lines of I don't know. I guess I don't. It was. I feel like his character could have worked had he been given like just better dialogue in that sense. I feel like it was too like too upfront. I don't know. I didn't like the dialogue or the what he was given. I do, like you said, he's looking out for his son, and I understand that, but I just don't like the way he was. I don't know. I just don't like him too much.
Now, one of the like right away, one of the biggest differences I noticed with this movie is that the opening scene with Jor-El on the planet Krypton was a lot longer than it was in any of the previous incarnations. What did you feel about that long scene between him, his wife, and General Zod, and the birth of birth of Kal-El?
Literally the origin of Kal-El. Literally.
Yeah.
um. Again, it comes down to the acting, and I did not like Superman's mother, biological mother. I felt like the whole departing scene when they're sending him off. It was. I felt. It felt like I felt like there was a lack of emotion in that. I didn't really feel like you saw a little tear going down, and yeah, typical sad. Oh, I'm sad. I have to give my son away. So, goodbye, son. I didn't really feel sadness. I didn't feel I didn't feel much emotion, and that really it wasn't a strong picture. That feeling that you should get of giving your child away, sending your child away for a better future. I didn't feel anything in that sense because the emotions are like just seeing them how they were didn't do anything for me.
Oh, I thought they were very satisfactory to my in my opinion. I thought felt the emotional weight of that whole scene. I did feel like the entire introduction scene did feel like it went on a bit too long. I mean, you've got like this chase scene. You got Jor-El riding a four-winged dragon-looking creature. I was like, it felt like some sort of like high-tech version of Avatar.
I have to comment on that again. It was really long, but at the same time, I don't know why, but I felt like it was rushed as well.
Really?
They were trying to put in like so many little things into that long scene. So it was rushed and I don't know. It was a very weird opening for me.
Like here's Jor-El like witnessing the birth of his son. Now here's him talking to the council about Krypton erupting. Now here's General Zod trying to take over. Now here's Jor-El running away from Zod's lackeys. Then General Zod gets captured, and then Jor-El sends his child to Earth.
Exactly. It was very rushed but very long, so it wasn't. I don't know. I didn't really like the opening too much
Mhm.
myself.
Now, how did you felt about the entire second half of the film when General Zod comes back into the picture and then starts to the action sequences
That
begin?
part started getting me pumped. Nothing more than a typical superhero movie though. Like it's got really good effects and really good scenes. So it did get the movie did progressively get better, but never to the point where I was like, yeah, go Superman, so pumped. Oh, never to that point. How about you?
For me, they actually did get me pumped to a certain extent. It didn't get nowhere. It didn't really get me as pumped as I was when I saw Dark Knight Rises last year. For this one, I felt like this is the first time that Superman gets to go all out in a live action movie. Because I feel like before they were either limited by their special effects at the time, or it was directed very differently. Like with Superman Returns, Superman's just moping about most of the time rather than actually fighting anyone. I feel like it was it was actually a really smart decision to use General Zod because most people complain, "Hey, Superman's too powerful. How am I supposed to invest in a character that can't get hurt?" But for here to have Superman go against his own people who are equally as strong, I felt like that did create enough tension, and I really liked how gave you an idea of just how strong and powerful these characters are. Because it reminded me of an episode in the last episode of Justice League Unlimited, where Superman told Darkseid how living on Earth feels like he's living in a world made of cardboard, and that he's constantly having to control his powers.
I feel like I live in a world made of cardboard, always taking constant care not to break something, to break someone. Never allowing myself to lose control, even for a moment, or someone could die. But you can take it, can't you, big man? What we have here is a rare opportunity for me to cut loose and show you just how powerful I really am.
Here, you see them rip apart so many buildings in this movie. You can tell, like anything they touch just turns to dust.
Now, one thing I do have to add with those scenes is I do actually really like the parts where Superman can't work well under
A closed environment.
not necessarily that but the Kryptonic environment. He's lived on Earth for
Yeah.
so many years that he can't live or can't be in an area that is like Krypton, and it works on the reverse as well for the other Kryptonians. They've been living in a Kryptonian lifestyle. Now, when they get to Earth, they have to wear a certain protection so that they don't get hindered by the Earth.
Right, I like that idea. Also, you just reminded me, there's no kryptonite in this movie. So I think having kryptonic, if that's an actual comic book term, kryptonic atmosphere was a good substitute for actual kryptonite.
Right. Actually,
In fact, kryptonite is usually like this crystal from the planet that Superman came from. But here, one of the biggest changes is that there are no crystals on Krypton. It's like a very natural, organic-looking planet. So I don't think there really is going to be kryptonite in this movie universe.
we'll see what happens. I'm actually really curious to find out what's going to happen. How did you feel about the little twist, if you can call it a twist? Because I think they were trying to make it into a twist for the movie.
I mean, at the very end.
No, the twist with what Jor-El did, Kal-El, what he did that made Zod very, very mad.
Oh, I saw that twist coming from a mile away. I mean, you see what he does, like with that special important artifact. You're like, oh, okay, I can tell what he's doing with that special artifact, MacGuffin artifact.
Right, not much of a twist in that sense, right?
Right. I mean, yeah, it's not really a big reveal there.
How did you feel about the final fight?
The final fight, I thought it was really big, epic, and exhilarating. You see these people going at it, all like Zod and Superman going at it like constantly. He used to see Zod, he's just mad. He's on his last legs. He knows that it's either all or nothing. and then how the fight ends, how it happened. I have very strong issues with the ending of that fight. Of course, I can't really get into it due to spoilers, but it's just something that no one should see in a Superman movie. Feel like that could have gone so many other different ways.
I agree with you on that. I like the fight scene. The only thing is I felt like it dragged on. It was a little too long of a fight scene, but I still enjoyed it. I had a good time. I liked watching them pummel each other. It was a very good time, and like you said, that scene was surprising. And for some reason, everyone in our theater was clapping.
Because they're not they think of Superman as this kid friendly character, and they want to see a more hardcore Superman.
Right. And again, there was other moments where actually even in the beginning of the movie, people were clapping, and I was like, oh, yay, Superman, yay. But I don't know, that kind of threw me off. I've never been someone who like just claps at the beginning of a movie unless like I'm really hyped or I'm like I know it's gonna be something fantastic, and what I got was nothing too crazy.
You said that the fight was a bit too long, right? I think the reason why, probably because there were so many other fights before that. I mean, you had like Superman and Zod fight number 1. You had Superman and Feora, and then you had Superman versus Feora and the Silent Henchman, which I think was a callback to the 2 previous henchmen from Superman 2. And then you have that fight with Superman and the spaceships, and then finally that big last fight.
You know what? You're right, because they're really back to back to back. Maybe a little dialogue here between other characters, but back to back. So,
which again goes back to my original complaint that there's quite a bit of repetition in this movie.
Right. Yeah. I can definitely see what you mean, but again, it's good to have action, but and again, when there's like just action to action to action, it got kind of tiring.
Now, were there any other elements of this movie that you like enjoyed or did not enjoy?
It's a bit of a nitpick, but I wasn't too big of a fan of the movie jumping back and forth into past and present with him growing up. I thought it was like very I found it very strange that they kept going back and forth, and they kept showing this one of the earlier kids that had bullied him growing up, and I thought that was kind of weird. I guess it really didn't turn into anything. It really didn't develop into anything. Seeing that kid over and over again, I just thought that was weird. But overall, there's nothing really else that was bad about the movie. Nothing else that was really good about the movie. Again, overall, it's a really pretty movie. I mean, the effects are they're pretty good. But that's all I can really say overall. How about you?
I was very I was initially put off by the non-linear style of storytelling, but then I've seen other movies do that where they have the present day and then you would have the main protagonist experiencing flashbacks to certain events because something in the present reminded him or her of the past. And so we got to see the different his different memories of when he was a kid in elementary school, when he was a high schooler, when he was a young adult. So yeah, I really enjoyed how present day Clark has learned what he had learned from those specific moments in his life. And also, it separates itself from the original movie, which was just straightforward, which was a straightforward narration. One thing that I really enjoyed in this movie was the score by Hans Zimmer. Now, for those of you who don't know, Hans Zimmer, he was also the person behind the music in the Dark Knight trilogy, as well as the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Now, unlike, one of the biggest things that came out of the original Superman movies was the John Williams theme song. It's so iconic. It's about as famous as the movie itself. Da 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 da. It's like a very easy to remember theme that anyone can hum off the top of their head.
hum and recognize, and you can hum it to anyone.
Along with like other John Williams works like Indiana Jones or Star Wars. For this one, now what if any of you have watched my review for The Hobbit, I mentioned that one thing I really do not like about most summer blockbuster about most movies is that they have very forgettable scores. I mean, I cannot tell you one single musical note from The Amazing Spider-Man or The Avengers, but with Hans Zimmer, he's sort of like the opposite of John Williams in that his music is much more subtle, yet still has a bit of is still recognizable, and that was definitely the case here. I really like the music; it fit with the tone of the movie, and it was it was very heroic sounding. And I love that the build up into that and how it was used in multiple scenes.
Yeah, actually, I agree. I think you liked it a little bit more than I did, but I felt like it worked. It did its job, and I really liked it. It really fit the movie.
So now that we covered pretty much everything that we want to talk about, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts, man. I feel like I've been giving this to a lot of movies recently, but I'm tempted to say that it's worth a watch on the full screen because it's Superman, but I can't fully say to watch it. If anything, I'd say this is a movie you should rent. Rent and watch, and give it a watch. It's fantastic on the big screen. It's really nice and pretty looking, but again, personally, I'd say just wait for it to come out on DVD. If I had to give it if I had to give it a rating, which I do, I'd probably...
Which you are.
Which I am going to do. I'd give it 2.5 stars.
I see.
Yeah, again, for me, it was more of an average movie. Average 2, on the lower end. A big issue for me was, again, the acting. I know you don't see that too much yourself, but I found the acting to be a little problematic for me, and the story too.
Interesting. I enjoyed this movie. It seems like I enjoyed this movie a lot more than you did. I enjoyed the acting in general. I enjoyed the new Superman and Lois Lane. I enjoyed Zod. I definitely enjoyed the spectacle that this movie provided, and I feel like it's a nice way to introduce fans to Superman. Now, is it as good or better or even better than the original first two Christopher Reeve movies? I would have to say no. Those movies are like timeless classics. I really can't see anything wrong with them, unless you're not watching the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2. Now, had it not been for the repetitive plot and some of the side characters that don't get much development, and that ending, I would have given this movie a 5, but a lot of those things would have bogged it down down to a 4, which is my rating for The Man of Steel.
That's surprising. Two totally different, two almost different ratings.
Right, and I think that's really, I think that's one of the best things of having a second person come along, because it's really nice to see. It's very interesting to compare and contrast such opposite thoughts, which hasn't really happened. Most of the times we have agreed on most of the movies that we have seen.
Yeah, so I'm really happy I got to see this movie with you, and it's finally a movie where we're actually really split on we really have different opinions on the film itself. So, let's see what the next film will bring for us.
Right. Oh, yeah, for those of you wondering, there is no secret special ending at the end of Man of Steel.
Yeah, don't stick around.
Trust us, we stuck around and we got nothing.
We got suckered in because they did not turn on the lights. Because when they don't turn on the lights, that usually indicates a secret. Thanks.
And there are no secrets. There's nothing in this movie that's hinting at a Justice League or Wonder Woman or Batman movie or anything like that. There's not a single reference in this movie that would have connected this film with any other superhero movies. Until next time, everybody, take care.
We'll see you guys next time.